Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shantir Shantirame Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy, may all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We begin today on verse number 277. Svatmanyeva sada sthitya mano nashyati yoginaha vasananam kshayaschataf swadhyasa apanayam kuru. By continually remaining absorbed in the Atman, the yogi's mind is destroyed and the desires perish. Therefore, get rid of your superimposition. Let's take it phrase by phrase. By continually remaining absorbed in the Atman. What does it mean to continually remain absorbed in the Atman? And why is it a challenge? The reason it is a challenge is that right now we are continually absorbed in something else. And one way to describe that absorption is in our identity as the body and mind. Now, we don't go about the day saying, I'm a body, I'm a mind. We don't say that. But all of our thinking, our feelings, our relationships with things and people in the world around us are based on our identity that this is me. So the challenge of remaining absorbed in the Atman is that we cannot remain absorbed in two things, and especially two mutually opposing things at the same time. If I am identified with the body, I am not identified with the Atman. We cannot be identified with both. And the example that we often cite in Vedanta is of a coiled rope that is mistaken for a snake. So when we mistake a coiled rope for a snake, although while I am describing this example, there are apparently two things. There is a rope and then there is the snake that I see. But when I'm actually perceiving, I'm just perceiving one thing. I'm just perceiving the snake. And when I switch on the light, I just perceive the rope. I never, ever see both rope and the snake at the same time. Exactly in the same way, as long as I'm identified with this body mind as me, in other words, as long as I think of myself as a human being. Now, thinking of ourselves as a human being is not any big crime. But the implication of looking upon ourselves as human being is, I have this human body. I have this mind dwelling within the body. Maybe if a dog probably has the identity of being, I'm a dog. And that's because the dog is dwelling inside a dog's body. But whether it's a dog's body or a human body, there is the body that's involved. And what we are being asked here to do and why it's a challenge is that it's completely turning our self-understanding on its head. We know how difficult it is to change our idea, our opinion about other people and things. Sometimes we become very judgmental. We quickly judge, oh, this person is like this, or this place is like this, or this particular dish is like that. And even when at some later point our experience contradicts our judgment, we know it's not easy, that the first impression always kind of sticks around. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to change our idea even about other people, places, and things. How much more difficult it would be to change our self-perception about who we are. I remember I know a friend of mine who was from a very young age, somehow people in his family kept on telling him, you don't have a musical sense, you can't sing. And later on when he grew up, apparently he was not like a great singer, but he did have some music sense. He could sing, but because he had been told so much in the childhood, no, you can't do it, he never ever felt that he could do it, even when others were very supportive and said, no, you're doing pretty well. If that thing can happen with just a judgment passed by people around us about who we are and how influenced we may get by remembering what other people think of us. Think about if we have been looking upon ourselves, not just in a matter of few years, maybe life after life after life, that we are this body-mind complex. And now suddenly we read in a book like, no, you remain absorbed in the Atman. You are not the body and mind, you are the Atman. Intellectually, sometimes we can appreciate the idea. But when we go about our day-to-day activity, we know that it's difficult. And so by continually remaining absorbed in the Atman, it's challenging, it's not impossible, but it's difficult. The yogi's mind is destroyed and the desires perish. The idea is this, that the body and the mind are the coverings over who I am. I have forgotten I'm inside. I've become identified with these coverings. And in order for me to know who I am, these coverings have to go. It's a little bit like if there is a treasure hidden under, say, 2 blankets. I won't be able to see the treasure unless and until those blankets are removed. So think about it a little bit like that. So we have these kind of 2 blankets, the blanket of the body and the blanket of the mind. And inside that is the treasure, the Atman. And we are not able to see it because they are covered by these 2 layers, these 2 blankets. Now, the body, that layer will go away. We may not want it to go away soon, but sooner or later it will. And so that one blanket going away we don't have to really strive hard for it. The more challenging is the inner blanket, the blanket of the mind. And as I have often mentioned on earlier occasions, the idea of rebirth or what happens after death, the way the framework Vedanta presents us is that at present we have this trichotomous personality. So there is the external layer, the body. There is the invisible part of my being. Collectively, we just can call it the mind, which would include the intellect, the emotions, the feeling, the ego, all of the non-tangible parts of my personality. And within that is the self, the Atman. So what does the death mean? Death simply means this external layer, this physical body, that becomes non-functional. When that is left, that is like cast aside. But death is not the death of the mind. So when someone dies and people say, oh, this person has left us, what has left is the Atman and the mind of that person. The mind is not dead. Now it's the mind that is the storehouse of all our karma, all our feelings, our emotions, our memories, and so on. And the mind is what provides the continuing link between one life and the next. So when we are born, we already come with some like in health, field of health, is because pre-existing conditions. So we are already born with these pre-existing impressions, the impressions and memories that we have carried over from all of our past lives. And so, while the body remains for several decades, it's more perishable than the mind, which continues life after life after life. So in every life we'll get a new body, but the mind that you and I have has been with us for a long, long time. And that's what is mentioned here, that only when we are continually absorbed in the Atman, in other words, dwell with the thought, I am the Atman. And I am the Atman simply means I am birthless and deathless. The Atman has no beginning, no end. The Atman is ever free. The Atman knows no disease. The Atman never gets tired. Right now, our experience is just the opposite. We know we were born at some point. We know we'll die at some point. We know we tend to fall sick now and then. We get tired. All the characteristics of the body and mind belong to us right now. And so, being absorbed in the Atman means to every time I feel I'm a human being, I just remind myself, no, it might feel as if I'm a human being, but in reality, I'm a divine being. I am the Atman. So when I'm able to do that, it's then that the yogi's mind is destroyed. Because unless and until the mind is destroyed, we cannot be free. Because this mind has the ability to generate another body and another birth. And so the goal, if we must use it in a rather destructive terms, is what in Sanskrit they say, manonasha, the destruction of the mind. That's the tough part. And that's why when people say, oh, get rid of your ego. Not so easy. Because ego is such an intrinsic part of the mind. And a mind has this persistence. It's the mind that is superimposed on the Atman. It's that blanket which covers the Atman. And unless and until that blanket is removed, we cannot see the Atman. That's the idea. Verse 278. Tamodvabhyam rajas sattvat sattvam shuddhena nashyati tasmat sattvam avashtabhya swadhyasa apanayam kuru. Tamas is destroyed by the other two, sattva and rajas. Rajas by sattva and sattva by the pure Atman. Therefore, cultivate sattva and get rid of your superimposition. It's pretty clear. Most of you are aware that our material identity, that matter itself, is seen as having these three primary attributes called gunas: sattva, rajas, tamas. Tamas, to put it very briefly and rather simplistically, rajas is the principle of activity, the desire to go forth, to do something, the passions and the ambitions, something that drives us, pushes us forward. All of this is the rajas. Tamas is the inertia part of it. It's something that holds us back, something that is the opposite of activity, if you like. And then sattva is considered the principle of light, of harmony, of peace, something that transcends both this hyperactivity and then this laziness or inertia. The challenge about this, it's a little bit like Swami Brahmananda, a great disciple of Ramakrishna, once said about food. He said, what is the ideal quantity to eat? And he said, you must eat up the 50% of your stomach should be filled with solid food, 25% with liquid, and the other 25% is just for the free movement of air. It sounds very neat, but how do we know when we are eating? How do we know how much percent of the stomach? So that's the kind of a challenge we might experience. We might understand intellectually, oh, there are these 3 gunas, and I need to deal with these gunas in an intelligent way. But how to know which guna is operating at what time and how it is manifesting in my life? And the challenge is because especially these two, tamas and sattva, externally, in some respects, can often seem very similar. So it's like someone in deep samadhi could be just sitting still, and someone who is fast asleep is also just sitting still. And so externally, you don't know, is this person just like unconscious or is this person in samadhi? And if we do not have enough ability to look within, to examine oneself and to assess oneself, it's so easy, even if we choose not to deceive other people, that we might be deceiving ourselves. It's possible that I'm so immersed in inactivity, being so lazy, just filled with inertia, and I just think like, oh, I'm just withdrawing from the external world. I'm just like deep inside. I'm just filled with, I'm going within to the Atman. But for all we know, it must be just pure laziness. I just don't want to go and do my work. And so that's the challenge. And that's why, in fact, in Swami Vivekananda's lectures, especially the lectures he gave in India, we find him emphasizing this idea again and again. He says that people have gotten immersed in tamas. They don't want to do work. They don't want to go about and carry out their responsibilities. And they think, oh, we have become very spiritual. We are withdrawing from the world of karma. And so he said the best way to eliminate tamas from our life is to consciously cultivate the spirit of activity, rajas. And that's why he encouraged people. Now, activity can be good or bad, can be done in a dharmic way or its opposite. Activity, it's like this. I can do good things or I can do terrible things. So if I can consciously engage in activity, doing good things, doing something that is healthy, positive, something that will benefit me, that will benefit the people around me, benefit the community, then that's rajas. But that kind of activity will help eliminate this inertia within us. And that's what is meant by saying tamas is destroyed by sattva and rajas. And then once we have this rajas within, it's then that sattva can eliminate that rajas. Now sattva, we might say, well, sattva is so good. It's a principle of harmony and peace. Why don't we just keep it? And the reason is that, no, ultimately, that also is an attribute of the material world. To go to the spirit, we have to leave all of these things behind. Some of you might remember Sri Ramakrishna used to narrate a story which illustrates the functioning of these three gunas. So he compared these three gunas to three robbers. So they said, here is this one person, a wealthy person, was going on a road trip, and a part of it he had to cross a forest. And as he was crossing that forest, these three robbers stopped him and took away all his possessions. And then one of them said, let's kill him now. We don't need him. And then if you keep him, then perhaps this person might go and report to the police, and then we can get caught. The best way to keep oneself safe, as some criminals might think, is to destroy all evidence and destroy all witnesses. So this person has seen us, we have robbed him, the safest way is to just kill him. Then a second robber says, no, let's not kill him. Let's just tie him up to a tree, and then perhaps if some wild animals come and eat him up, at least it's not on us. We have just tied him up. And so they then tie him up to a tree, and then they go away. After some time, so one of them had said kill him, the other one had said just tie him up. The third one had just kept quiet all through. He was also a robber, but he had kept quiet. After some time, this third robber returns and then says to this person, oh, I'm so sorry that we had to do this to you. And so let me free you. He doesn't return the money, but he says, let me free you. And so this third robber comes, frees this person, and says, you might lose your way in this forest. So come, I'll show you the way out. And so kind of takes him, guides him of how to get out of that forested area. And then points out, he said, okay, now that's the road. If you take that road, you'll be able to reach your destination. And although that person is a robber, but he still had freed this person. So this person this wealthy person who was robbed is very grateful to this third robber. And he says, you look like a good man. So why don't you come with me and leave this life behind and come with me, and I will reward you for saving my life. And this person said, no, sorry, I can't come with you. All said and done, he's still a robber. He's still on the wanted list. And so he says, no, I can't go, but you go. So Ramakrishna gave this example to show this is how these three gunas function. So the guna which said, just kill him, that is tamas. The second robber who said, no, let's just tie him up, that's rajas. That's why rajas binds us to this material world and its concerns. And then sattva is the one who frees us. But even sattva cannot take us right till the end. Sattva will only point the way and say, okay, now that's the way to go. But beyond that, I cannot go. And so that's the idea of why sattva also needs to be conquered or overcome through pure Atman. Therefore, cultivate sattva and get rid of your superimposition. Verse 279. Prarabdham pushyati vapur iti nishchitya nischalaha dhairyamalamya yatnena swadhyasa apanayam kuru. You can see all of these verses are ending with this phrase, swadhyasa apanayam kuru. Swa adhyasa. Adhyasa means superimposition. Swa is the self. Apanayam kuru, remove. So remove or get rid of this superimposition on the self. So recognizing that the prarabdha karma preserves the body, remain unaffected, and with patience and care, get rid of your superimposition. Now, to very quickly summarize the the different kinds of karma. Karma means activity. And this karma theory, they sometimes categorize karma into different groups. So all of the activities we are engaged in, both physical and mental. Mental activity is thinking. So all actions, physical or mental, lead to a result. All activity, karma leads to karma phala. And karma phala, or the results of actions in terms of experience, are only really two. That if the work is successful, if it's completed well, we feel happy. Some kind of a happiness comes just through the completion of or success of the work, but also oftentimes through the recognition of that success by others. So happiness is one possible result of action. And sometimes if the work does not succeed, we fail or whatever, then it can produce the opposite, dukkha. So sukha or dukkha, joy or sorrow, are the two possible experiential results of work. And so every time we do something, we are creating karma. Every time we are experiencing either joy and sorrow, we are eliminating karma. So think about it's just like if you kind of put it in financial terms, every action that we do, we are earning karma dollars, if you like. And every joy and sorrow we experience in life, we are spending our karma dollars. Now, normally, in just kind of a regular idea of finances, the more we have, the happier we are. People want more and more dollars. Now, karma dollars is just the opposite. The less we have, the better off we are. And the reason for that is, what leads to another life, what leads to future lives, is this balanced karma that we have, karma dollars that we have. In other words, as long as I have karma in my account, that karma will lead to future births. If we want to keep on being born again and again, we don't need to do anything. We don't even need to read this book. But if and when, and that's what detachment, or that's what dispassion really means. Once we begin to realize how repetitive and boring and monotonous this entire experience called life is, then we wouldn't want it to continue. And therefore, sometimes a friend of mine used to say that I just don't like the idea of not being born again. But then I think about, if I'm born again, to have to go to school and all those homeworks and assignments and I think of all these things and no, better not to go through that whole cycle again. So it's like this. Just as an aside, oftentimes when we want to decide something, oftentimes we think that we are being very rational, we are being objective, we are weighing all the pros and cons, and then we are taking a decision. And sometimes that's what we do. But oftentimes we find that the decisions we take are not so much done using logic and reasoning. Most of our decisions are taken guided by our emotions. So there is something I want to do, and then I say, no, but I must think about it logically. But we kind of fool ourselves. If I want to do something, I'll only look at some of the good side of it. And I say, oh yeah, I think this is what I would do. And if I don't want to do something, then I will just see the negative side of it. It's not very easy to be completely objective. We like to think of ourselves as very objective. We think, I'm very rational, I'm very grounded, I always take decisions. And as I said, maybe most of the time, most of us do. But oftentimes, if we are not alert, if we are not careful, we might find that we are kind of tilting the balance in a direction we want it to go to. And about rebirth is a little bit like that. If I have these desires and towards life, then I will only think about the positive side of it and say, what's wrong with being born again? And if I'm just filled with lot of pain and stress and anxiety, and if I say, I don't want this to continue forever, then I would look at all the negative sides of it. And so this is just an observation that we have to be a little vigilant about. Because there is so much talk about objectivity, especially in the academic world. And a lot of thought has gone into this. How objective can we really be? We can try as much as possible, but there is the subjective element always comes into play into all the decisions that we take in life. And so similarly, the karma that is stored in our account, if you like, when we are born with a certain amount of karma that is ready to yield result. That's what prarabdha means. Pra-arabdha. Arabdha means that which has begun. Pra is a prefix, meaning the karma that has begun to yield its fruits. The example that I often like to give is, suppose I have to go on a vacation, and I from my bank account, I withdraw some $2,000 and say, okay, I'm going to a vacation to Hawaii, and I have these $2,000 with me. And I go on a vacation, I book my hotel room and spend time there. Now I know I cannot live in Hawaii forever, because how long I'm going to stay there will be determined by, this is the amount that I have carried with me, which I can use in my budget. Once that amount is over, I have to come back. Exactly in the same way, we might have infinite karma in our account, but when we are born, we don't bring all that infinite karma with us. Just as those of you who do gardening know that not every seed, that we might have a bunch of seeds, but not every seed is ready for planting. It takes time for the seed to germinate and for the plant to come out. And that's a very crude example. The idea is, not all of the karma in our account, in our store, is ready to yield its fruits at the same time. And by some mysterious law, at any given time, once the person dies, from that person's store, a certain amount of karma comes up. Or these many karma seeds are ready to give their fruit, ready to yield their result. That karma, which is ready to yield its result, is called the prarabdha karma. The lifespan of a person is determined by this prarabdha karma. And we don't know how much that prarabdha karma is. So think about it this way. If someone now sends you on a vacation to, again, just to stick with Hawaii or any other place if you like, and says, I put some money in your pocket, you can use all that money for your vacation. And you can stay there as long as this money lasts. But you cannot look in your pocket how much money you have. You don't know how much money you have. And therefore, you can go on a vacation, but you're never really sure when that money in your pocket will be exhausted and you'll be sent away. That's more or less our situation now. So we are born, we know that we will live as long as our karma is not exhausted. Our karma is in our pocket, so to speak, but we cannot look into the pocket. We don't know how much there is. And that's why none of us knows how long we are going to live. But as long as the prarabdha karma still remains, we will not die. And that's why sometimes we see some cases, we kind of hear about this all the time. I mean, there is, let's say, a train accident. Well, there was one recently in Ohio, or an aeroplane accident. Or sometimes we'll see there is such a major, or an earthquake, like in Syria, that one. So what is it that determines? Not everyone dies in an earthquake. Maybe a whole building collapses and maybe pretty much everyone is dead, and after two days, when the rescue workers go and suddenly said, oh, we were able to rescue 2 people and they were alive. So what is it that determines who dies and who continues to live? And if we follow the karma theory, then the karma theory says, as long as your prarabdha still exists, you will not die. And once your prarabdha is exhausted, just any reason will do. Sometimes people we just usually in terms of death, we always, as the kind of examples I gave just now, which always in terms of some accident or some calamity, but there doesn't have to be any reason like that. Apparently, healthy people also die. And therefore, the karma theory simply states, as long as prarabdha is there, no matter what, I will live. Once the prarabdha karma is exhausted, no matter how healthy I am, no matter how much organic food I eat, if the time comes, I'm going to go. And that's what is said here. Recognizing that the prarabdha karma preserves the body. In other words, as long as the prarabdha karma is there, I'm fine. Remain unaffected. Now, we're going to put this into context and understand it clearly. This doesn't mean don't take care of yourself. This doesn't mean don't follow any rules. Clearly not. What it means is that we need to do all that we do about taking good care of ourselves, about our body, our mind, everything, but always with this awareness that what is preserving my life ultimately is the amount of karma that is there. And as long as prarabdha karma is there, and we don't know how long it is there, I'm quite okay. Remain unaffected. That's the most important thing. That's the key phrase here. Sometimes we can, all the joy and meaning in our life can get sucked away just by anxiety about the future or memories of the past. We don't live. We may be breathing, but just because we are existing does not necessarily mean we are living. Existing and living are 2 different things. It's possible for someone to be on a life support for years together, completely unaware. That person is existing, but could we say that person is living? And therefore, prarabdha, as long as prarabdha is there, to remain unaffected means I take whatever precautions that need to be taken. And having done that, I don't need to be so obsessed or worried or anxious about things that I'm not able to live my life well. And therefore it says, remain unaffected and with patience and care, get rid of your superimposition. Now both these are very important. Patience is dhairya and care is effort, a yatna. If I am mistaking a rope for a snake, no amount of just yelling and shouting and getting worried and anxious about what am I going to do with the snake and then sit in the corner and cry, nothing is going to happen. The snake will always remain there. What I will need to do is to find a source of light. And that might need patience. I may not immediately know where the light switch is or from where I can get some light. It will need effort. I can't just be sitting doing nothing. Only then the light is switched on and I see, oh no, there is no really snake here. Now here, in the case of the ignorance and the Atman, the light is within. The light of consciousness, the light of awareness, being alert. And therefore, none of these things happen immediately. It needs a lot of patience because, you see, to learn something new is easy. To unlearn the wrong things we have learned or the wrong things that we have, wrong habits that we have cultivated, that is the tough part. So learning new things is easy, but how do we unlearn? And that's why patience is needed. Sometimes you will see that why do we often say that when you are learning any new skill or new activity, try to learn it from an authentic source or a source that is trustworthy. And that is because learning is easy. And if I learn something correctly, it stays with me no matter what. Once you learn how to ride a bicycle, you will never forget it. Even if you, in the meantime, in middle 10 or 15 years, you don't ride a bike. And then suddenly you get it, you will never forget it. Or like swimming. A lot of these skills, once you get it, and when you have learned it well, they remain with you forever. But now, if I've learned something badly, wrong, in a wrong way, and then if someone corrects me and says, no, that's not the way to do it, you do it this way, and I might understand, I might try to do it, but some of the wrong muscle memory that the body has, or the wrong ways of thinking that we have, changing that needs effort. And therefore, patience and effort are both needed to remove that superimposition. So we'll continue this study. And as I said, many of these verses that we are studying end with this phrase, get rid of your superimposition. The superimposition primarily is of the body and the mind on the self, on the Atman. So the Atman is, in Sanskrit, they call it adhisthana, mean the substratum. It's like in the rope snake example, the rope is the substratum, is the reality. The snake is what is superimposed on it. And when something is superimposed on something else, you just see the superimposed thing. You don't see the substratum. In the same way, the Atman is here is in the place of rope. So the Atman is the substratum, and the body and the mind are superimposed on it. And that's why we are able to see the body, we are able to feel the mind, but we are not able to see the substratum, the adhisthana, which is the Atman. So removing that superimposition means removing these coverings so that I can see the Atman. And as we have seen in a verse that we saw last week, seeing the Atman, although we are using the word seeing, is not an objective experience. Seeing the Atman is not like this is the Atman. It will be a subjective experience, meaning seeing the Atman would be I am the Atman. So in the rope and snake analogy, we say this is a rope. But in the applying that to the self, we are not going to say this is the self. It's like no matter how strong you are, no matter how much weight you can lift, you can never lift yourself. Because in order for any activity to take place, there has to be the subject, and there is the object, and there is the action that connects the two. So I can lift anything that is not me, but I cannot lift myself. So I cannot see myself the way I see an object, because I am I, and therefore seeing the Atman means knowing I am the Atman. So we'll stop here today. If you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, questions, feel free to ask. Yep.
Swamiji. Swamiji, the book says in verse 277, by continually remaining absorbed in the Atman, the yogi's mind is destroyed. So I was curious, why is Shankaracharya referring to the yogi's mind? Why does he use the word yogi in there?
Yeah, good. Well, yogi means, it comes from the word yuj, to join. A yogi can be understood as one who is making an effort to focus their attention on something. And so every spiritual seeker is therefore a yogi on the way to attaining the goal of yoga. So, yeah.
Swamiji, if I am the Atman and I'm superimposed with the body and mind and all this, so who is going to see Atman? How could I see myself? So where is this confusion? Because Atman is not an object.
Correct. Yeah. So good. And there is a story that is often told of a young prince. So an heir to the throne was born, but immediately after birth, the prince immediately after birth was kidnapped by some disgruntled soldiers in that king's army, and they wanted to just take revenge and just kill off that heir. But they took that little baby after birth and took it to the forest, and somehow they just could not bring themselves to killing that baby. So they said, we'll just leave it into the forest, and then it will perish anyway. And so then they left the baby in that forest and came away. And the story goes that a hunter couple, one of the tribesmen there, they were passing by, they heard the baby's cry, they went and they brought the baby home. Turns out that they didn't have a child, and they saw, well, this is God's gift to them, and so they raised that baby as their own child. Years passed, this king got old, and finally the king died. Now, the king's trusted assistants, they went out. They knew that the baby was kidnapped, of course, and they thought, let's take a chance and see if we can find the heir somewhere, if he's still alive. And so they go about in search of that. Now, they knew there is a certain birthmark that this baby had. And so they were able to finally locate this young tribal young man, and had this exact birthmark and several other signs which showed this was in fact the prince who was kidnapped 20 years earlier. And so they took him back to the palace, told him he is not the hunter, the hunter parents are not really his real parents, that he is really the prince. Now we can say in this example that this boy, young man, who saw himself as a hunter, came to know, I'm not the hunter, but I'm really the prince. So he saw the prince, not as this is the prince, but that I'm a prince. So his growing up for those first 20 years of his life, thinking, I am a hunter was not his true identity, but his true identity was that he was a prince. That's how we have now grown up thinking of ourselves as these human beings, as with body and mind. Now a time will come when we realize, no, that's not my true identity, that I'm something more than just this body and mind. I'm the Atman, the birthless, deathless, divine spark that is within. That's who I am. And just like that young man then realized, I'm the prince, will realize I'm the Atman. So that is what is meant by saying, I see that I'm the Atman. So the Atman that is deluded about its true nature, then gets to know its true nature. Yes.
Swamiji, so I've been, reading these verses in the book that we're studying and thinking about how to practice, and so, it seems like there's two ways. Like one is to think positively that I am the Atman, and the way I think about it is I am pure awareness,
Mm-hmm.
And the other way, which actually, but it's easy to forget that. It's very hard to just remember that. But then the other way that I've been thinking is like, you recognize the things which are not the Atman. And in particular, the ones that come to my mind is like whenever there's any fear, that comes to my mind, it's not the Atman. So then then the thought comes that you're the Atman, so that fear dissolves. So we have fears continuously during our day, or desires or fears. And so I just feel like it's easier to remember it if you think about it when you're not. When you have either fear or desire, then you think about the Atman at that time.
Sure, yeah, that's a good way to do that. Yeah. One other helpful tip would be, we just cannot wish away the existence and the perception of our body and mind. So it's easy to say, well, I'm the Atman, but I'm still seeing the body and mind. One interim step that could be helpful is that to see the body and mind, but to see the body and mind as something that belongs to me. Now that's a different way than saying this is me. So not that this is me, but this belongs to me. Just the way a computer belongs to me, my car belongs to me, my home belongs to me. So if I can start looking upon my body, my mind, my thoughts, we do say my body, as if it is our possession, but then on other times, we just look upon the body as me. So actually, throughout the course of the day, very effortlessly, we are making this transition between this being me and this being mine. And actually, those are two different things. If it is mine, then it's not me. If it's me, then it's not mine. But we keep on moving back and forth with regard to our body, mind, sometimes seeing it as me, sometimes seeing it as mine. Now, if I can consciously think about the body and mind as very helpful, much needed instruments that we have, and the things that are helpful to us, we take good care of them. If you need your car for a daily commute to go to your work, then you will take good care of your car, because you know that if there's something goes wrong with your car, then you are handicapped. You know you are not the car, but you know that you need the car and you take care of the car. Similarly, you may take good care of your phone, your computer, because they are useful. They do a lot of work for you, but you never think, I'm my phone or I'm my computer. Exactly in the same way, can I look upon the body and the mind as, yes, they are great instruments. I'm going to take good care of them, but they are not me. That would be a good first step in trying to create a little bit of a distance between these material layers And then it becomes so much easier to go to the Atman. So that is one kind of a practical tip many spiritual teachers share with their students. Any other thought? Yes.
Namaskar, Swami. It's actually a follow-up question.
Could you just put the mic closer? Yeah.
It's actually a follow-up question to what you just explained. So you mentioned about Mano Nasha. Like the second layer of the blanket is much harder to peel off. So creating a distance between the Atman and the mind, can you give us some tips about how to do that, the harder part?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, a simple way, the reason, yeah, please sit down. The mind is clearly a more persistent cover, and it's not easy to create that distance between the mind. What makes it easier is living according to dharma. A life that is based on certain principles, certain values, a strong ethical, moral foundation. If that mind is that transparent and built on a foundation of truthfulness, honesty, selflessness, that mind has the ability to transcend itself. With that mind, we'll be able to see the Atman clearly. That's why Sri Ramakrishna said that pure mind, pure intellect, and pure spirit are one and the same thing. And so, if we try to remove the superimposition with our mind, which is already filled with so many desires and ambitions and unfulfilled aspirations, it's going to be difficult, almost impossible. And therefore, all of these practices, and as we saw in the beginning of this book, the preparation to start the study and the practice and to benefit from the practice is really these 4 basic practices we saw earlier. And among them, we saw the restraint. The third one, Shamadhi Shat Sampatti, Shama Dama Uparati Titiksha Samadhana Shraddha. That disciplining the mind, disciplining the senses, the ability to remain contented, forbearance, all of these qualities are important, and that will help to remove the superimposition. Thank you. Okay, so we will stop here today, and when we meet next time, we will begin with verse number 280. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhuhu. According to the lunar calendar, yesterday was the birthday of Sri Ramakrishna, according to the Tithi. And so we will celebrate his birthday with a special worship on Sunday, the 26th. So the puja, as the pujas have been during the recent months, will be fully online. The puja will begin at 10:30 and should end in about a couple of hours. So you can watch it from home. And as you did for Shivaratri and other pujas, keep a few flowers by your side. If you wish, you can cook a dish. And then when it's time to make the flower offering and food offering, I'll tell you the appropriate mantras to chant. So Sunday morning, no satsang here as usual, but online puja, worship of Ramakrishna on Sunday. And because of that, on Saturday, we will not have a meditation this Saturday. And next Wednesday, we will continue this study of the Vivekachudamani. So we'll conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.